A job that once eagerly accepted applicants with 3 years of experience now rejects them at the portal. The daily work hasn't changed, but the baseline requirement has shifted to include an entirely new certificate. A family looking for a home that fits their budget looks further and further outside the city limits. The mortgage eventually becomes affordable, but the hidden cost is a massive daily commute that drains hours away from that home. A supposedly quick request arrives on a nightstand at midnight. An evening of time off is interrupted by an update that cannot wait. None of these situations require a villain. One person answers a late-night message or pays for an extra credential because it gives them a slight, noticeable edge. It is a completely rational choice to get ahead. But soon, everyone else makes the same rational choice. The individual advantage disappears, but the new, heavier standard remains. It is a shared trap, an exhausting race where everyone runs significantly harder merely to remain in the exact same relative position. Welcome to the Underbridge. Today we are testing Robert H. Frank's book, The Darwin Economy. The central thesis explores a deeply uncomfortable economic dynamic, the exact point at which a private advantage becomes a public cost. It is easy to blame this tension on personal greed or corporate workaholism, but when one employee replies at 11 p.m. to secure a promotion, the old boundary for the entire team disappears. That pressure is a coordination problem, not a character flaw. This diagram outlines Frank's method for separating types of progress. First is absolute gain. If a new piece of hardware allows an entire team to produce better work in less time, the progress bar fills forward. The whole system advances. That is a genuine improvement. Then there is relative gain. An upgrade might merely jump one person to the front of a queue. The overall productivity remains static, but the sequence changes. To recover their lost rank, the rest of the queue is forced to acquire that exact same upgrade. Refusing to participate means actively losing ground. The question we have to ask is what happens to a system when stopping alone guarantees falling behind? Frank illustrates this using the evolutionary biology of male elk. Look at the sheer scale of these antlers relative to the animal's body. They require massive amounts of calcium, energy, and physical strength to carry through the woods. Inside the herd, those giant antlers serve a clear purpose. They provide a distinct, measurable advantage when competing against other males for mating rights. Economists call what happens next a positional externality. Over generations, the largest antlers succeed, meaning eventually every rival elk is born with large antlers. The relative advantage cancels out entirely. What remains is a population permanently burdened by the heavy, exhausting cost of carrying them. An individual trait can be highly useful in a competition, but the biological arms race it triggers becomes an unavoidable tax on the entire group. Consider the modern job market. Education certainly holds real absolute value. Degrees teach complex skills, and certifications protect the public from unqualified practitioners. But we must ask, are job requirements rising because the daily work is genuinely harder, or because employers need a blunt instrument to screen a crowded pool of applicants? A 2024 dissertation out of the University of Kentucky examined exactly this by tracking historical entry-level education requirements. Using occupational data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the study found a clear descriptive result. Formal degree requirements generally increased across the examined occupations over time. If the complexity of the task hasn't changed, but the degree requirement has, the credential is no longer building a skill. It is functioning as an expensive sorting tool for the queue. The logical response for any one applicant is to spend the years and the tuition to secure that next degree. As a collective, the workforce ends up spending vastly more time and money to preserve the exact same relative rank. This exact mechanism drives bidding wars over fixed assets, like housing and school access. Paying for an expensive home is not automatically wasteful. It often secures genuine absolute gains, like physical safety or a shorter trip to the office. But neighborhoods and highly rated schools are scarce. When one family decides to stretch their budget and pay more for that access, they establish a new reference price. The next family is forced to outfit them. Telling people to simply choose a cheaper option ignores the reality of the board. Bowing out means accepting lost services, lower-funded schools, and endless highway commutes. These massive bidding spirals do not result in genuinely better houses or newly constructed schools. The extra money is absorbed into the price of the land, forcing families to exhaust their wealth merely to buy the right to compete at a higher baseline. Frank published his book in 2011, describing a highly localized logic. He could not have predicted a global, continuous scoreboard delivered directly to our phones. Digital platforms and creator algorithms operate strictly on relative performance. A private standard of good work is replaced by a live, comparative ranking of clicks and viewer retention. On these platforms, relative position dictates absolute visibility. This chart maps out the incoming collision. On the bottom is a flat horizontal line representing finite human attention. Intersected by it is a sharply skyrocketing exponential curve representing AI content production. Artificial intelligence allows individuals to create vastly more content, much faster. As that gap widens, the individual response is highly predictable. To maintain visibility, creators and employees automate their workflows, answer emails instantly, and publish twice as often. Using these tools to become more efficient makes total sense for the individual user, yet in aggregate, the total volume of content explodes, making it vastly more difficult to be noticed. Ultimately, it is a wildly expensive, high-speed contest fought over the exact same, unchanging, completely finite pool of human attention. There is a strict boundary to this theory. Competition is not inherently wasteful. A race to engineer a medical breakthrough or to build safer public infrastructure yields undeniable productive gains for society. Heavy-handed government regulation is not an automatic cure either. Poorly designed rules and coordination failures can easily stifle useful experimentation. We have to audit the systems we participate in by asking 3 diagnostic questions. First, what changed in the actual outcome? Second, what changed only in the ranking? And third, could a shared rule preserve the useful progress while limiting the forced escalation? Telling an exhausted workforce to simply want less or to unplug from their devices is a fragile solution. When the system's rules make quiet people easily replaceable, opting out is a penalty, not a remedy. The deepest lesson of the Darwin Economy is that ambition itself is not the enemy, but we have to rigorously interrogate what our shared competitions are actually improving. Look again at the elk. An individual advantage has created a dense, unnavigable environment. When a system exclusively rewards the growth of larger antlers, the true tragedy isn't the physical burden placed on one animal. It is that the entire forest becomes impossible to move through. To tell the difference between genuine progress and an escalating arms race, we need a way to test these investments before we make them. Looking at this data filter, the first question to ask is, does the higher cost actually improve real output, safety, or well-being? Or does it belong in the second column, mainly boosting your relative ranking? Second, would you still make this specific investment if you knew every single competitor was forced to make the exact same one? If everyone buys the same advantage, it instantly cancels out your edge. And third, could we establish a shared baseline here, a floor that protects our time and access without limiting the growth of genuine underlying progress? There is a crucial caveat here. Not every uncomfortable competition needs a collective rule. Overcorrecting with rigid, sweeping rules can freeze useful experimentation and stifle the exact mechanisms that drive human advancement forward. We have to preserve the races that yield absolute gains. We want the intense competition that builds safer bridges, develops advanced medicine, and designs more capable tools. The danger lies entirely in unguided, escalating ambition that demands higher costs from all of us without delivering a single absolute gain. Society must remain vigilant. We have to notice the exact moment a temporary private advantage mutates into a permanent collective requirement. Look at the biological arms race of elk. Over generations, they evolve larger and heavier antlers specifically to compete with one another for mates. But think about it. When every single animal in the herd grows massive antlers, does the forest actually become easier to move through? Or does the dense brush only become increasingly difficult to navigate for everyone trapped inside it? True societal progress should be measured by the collective ease of navigating the forest, not by the sheer size of the burdens we force each other to carry.